G'day YouTubers, here we are up to episode 13 in a series that I thought I'd knock over in 4 or 5 episodes. I'm not superstitious about 13 at all. My mother was born on the 13th, so there's no superstition attached to it as far as I'm concerned. I hope that you guys do just as well out of this 13th episode as you have out of any of the previous ones. In this episode I'm going to have a look at an area that I didn't even know existed, but I discovered while I was researching these videos. I don't know how good you'll do out of it, but I'll throw it out there for you to try if you feel like it. From there we'll move over to the Banana Banks, down to Coochie and to Coochie Artificial Reef. So let's roll the clip and get started. This next area of reef is one that I didn't even know existed until I did the research for this video. It's just out from the car ferry terminal, and of course not knowing that it existed, I've never fished it. So I've included it as a bit of an Easter egg for you guys. If you want to have a look at it for yourselves, you might find something there. If you don't get the Easter egg reference, it's a computing term. It's not really important, but if not knowing what it means is bugging you, just Google computer Easter egg and you'll get 100 hits. It'll tell you all about it. Before they put in the green zone for the Cox Banks, the areas to the south of this used to be a good crabbing area and a reasonable fishing area while you were waiting for your crab pots. In particular, I'm not sure about the pronunciation on this, I never have been, but Arapa Creek used to be good for mud crabs. Now I can't pretend that I wasn't annoyed when they made that into a green zone. Not that I'd fished it for quite some time at that point, but I had in mind that it used to be a good spot and one day I might have gone back to it. Nevertheless, there's plenty of other places in Moreton Bay to fish and crab, so putting aside a few areas for breeding stock is not a bad thing when you get right down to it. Although back when they were announcing all their green zones and their plans for future green zones, it seemed like they were taking a lot of my fishing spots away. But losing one fishing spot is just an incentive to find another one. There's been some spot checking of the ocean floor in this area as well. Same caveats apply as to all the other ones that I've put up. I have transposed these dots from another map. I've got them as accurately as I can, but if there's any mistakes, it's my fault. It gives you a general idea of what's down there on the bottom, so you have a bit of an idea of what sort of fish to expect to be hanging around. And as always, it's a spot check, so a spot 50 feet away might be quite different. These images will give you a better idea of the parts that are covered by hard coral, soft coral and patchy coral. I said at the beginning that I hadn't fished this area at all, so I don't know what you'd expect to catch here. I do know the ferries operate out of that channel quite a lot, so there's going to be a fair bit of disturbance in the water. If there's any fish in the area, they must have gotten used to that disturbance. Alternatively, there'll be no fish in the area. Up to you guys if you want to give it a try. If I'm looking for something in close to shelter from the wind one day, I might give it a try, but to be honest, it's not somewhere I'm going to go out of my way to try. I'll only try it if it happens to suit the weather conditions at the time. I've got a couple of marks in this area, and since I've never fished this area, I've got no idea how I got them. I haven't made any note in my notebook about where they came from. I am meticulous about writing down whether a mark was given to me as a private mark, not to be shared. So there's no notation on them. They're public marks as far as that goes. I just can't remember where I got them. So if you'd like to give them a go, have a try at them. I can't tell you whether there was ever any fish caught there. Someone either gave them to me directly or I found them when I was browsing the internet. Do with them what you will. Just while we're flipping through the images of the green zone and the potential fishing areas, I'll draw your attention to the green line down alongside the Banana Banks. I used to drift those banks for whiting, flathead and the odd sale, and of course throw some crab pots along them as well. Depending on the tide, you'd want to drift the east or the west side of the banks. And after all these years, I don't remember which way the tide was. If you're not catching them on one side, you could try the other. But just be aware the green zone covers half the western side of the banks. So you can only fish the southern part of the Banana Banks on the western side because you need to stay out of that green zone. And now we come to Coochiemudlo Island. As far back as I can remember, the island has been serviced by a ferry, but when I first went over to it, there was no one living there. It's full of houses now. It's got shops and everything. Ferry still runs. You can get off the jetty and have a nice day on the beach. But if you've got your own boat, there's plenty of places to go into the beach. It's not a bad place to go onto the beach, but to be honest, I really prefer Peel and further north. But Coochie's not too bad. There's some decent fishing around the island as well. It has the advantage of only being a few minutes from Victoria Point. When I had the big boat, that was moored at Victoria Point, so it was no trouble to take the tender and fish anywhere around Coochie. That was on the days when the big boat didn't go off the mooring. There was a map of spot checking the ocean floor around Coochie. For some reason, the only map that I could find was a very large scale map, so it's made getting the points onto my map very difficult. So I wouldn't go trying to line up landmarks to figure out if you're over a particular type of bottom. It's nowhere near accurate enough for that. It's just a general idea. The areas here where they've surveyed the reef area and the patchy coral was on a much larger image. Therefore, it was fairly easy to transpose those areas onto my map. I think I've got them fairly accurate. The reef around the north side of the island is quite a decent fishing ground, and since it's so close to Vicky Point, it offers a chance to get out and have a fish if the weather's not quite so good. Got some marks around Coochie. Again, some of them are public, some of them are mine. Those couple in close to the shore on the north side of the island, as I recall, they were okay for a few whiting. Nothing spectacular, but you could go there and pick up a few whiting enough for a feed. The one down near the Red Buoy on the southeast corner of the island, that was a good fishing spot. You could get a bit of anything there. I particularly remember pulling up a big jew and a few big cod out of there. I can't really say what the fishing around Coochie is like these days because I haven't fished it since I sold the big boat. I did fish the western side of the island a couple of times, maybe 3, 4, 5 times, something like that. I didn't bother putting any marks in for there because all I can remember catching around there was catfish and toads, not the sort of thing I consider worth catching. And as always, treat the marks as suggestions, use your sounder, and if you don't see anything on your sounder, try another mark. By all means, check out the reef in between the marks. You just never know where they're going to be holding on a particular day unless you do the exploration yourself. Just while we're flipping through all the overlays on the map, I'll draw your attention to the yellow line that I've drawn between the two beacons to the north. Back in the day when I had the big boat and I did a lot of fishing from the tender, that was my line to know whether I was on the right spot. Usually the ends of the lines fish better than the middle. I didn't fish the middle all that much because I didn't have much success there. But either end of the line near the beacons worked pretty well for me. They've established an artificial reef to the east of Coochie. I've never fished this reef. In fact, I've never fished any artificial reef until a little bit over 2 years ago when I decided to give them a go. Prior to that, I'd fished offshore and fished the real reefs, if you want to put it that way. Never had any interest in the artificial reefs, for whatever reason. I guess I just thought, well, everyone's going to go there and I can pick up fish elsewhere. But yeah, they're quite interesting to fish. I can't say that I've mastered them yet. I've got a few ideas on how to fish them. I'll give them to you in a minute, but take them with a grain of salt because I'm very new to it. If they don't work for you, try something else. And what has given me some success on the artificial reefs is when the tide's not flowing very much, send out a live bait with no weight at all on it, or maybe just the tiniest bit of weight. And I'm talking the smallest sinker in your tackle box if you're going to put one on at all. Again, when the tide's not running very fast, put a squid or a pilchard on and let that float down. That seems to get a few, but it hasn't worked for me at all when there's been any sort of run in the water. When there's a lot of run in the water, I've been using a paternoster rig with a couple of baits on the rig, so 2 sets of hooks. I've started using snelled hooks on it recently. I've found that gives a better hookup rate. Put a snapper sinker on the bottom on about a 20-pound mono, or even something a little bit less, 10 to 20-pound mono. That way, if it gets hooked up on the bottom, you can break your sinker off and get the rest of your rig back. The paternoster itself is on the heavier line, and I keep the bottom bait probably 1 to 2 metres off the bottom, and the next bait another metre above that. That seems to have been the most successful for me so far when there's been a big run in the tide. However, I will point out that the guys that go out to these artificial reefs and pull up the 90cm snappers don't know what rig they're using, but they're doing way better than I am. Best I've pulled up is the sort of 60 odd centimetre snappers out of those reefs so far. Still working on it, but just want to make it clear that I'm no expert on these artificial reefs. The other key point in fishing the artificial reefs, and I haven't made up my mind on this, is do you drift, do you anchor, or do you spot lock? I've tried all of them and I can't say that I've done any better on one than the other so far. The jury's still out on that one, I'm still experimenting. I will put it in some future video if I ever get it worked out. One thing I am absolutely certain about is fishing the artificial reefs is that I do a lot better during the week than I do on the weekends. There's a lot fewer boats there during the week, and that's what I put it down to. Not as much noise, not as much disturbance, and the fish are all there, having a nice feed, waiting for my bait to come down. Well, that wraps up this episode, and I'm pretty sure that I'll be able to wrap up the series on the Central Moreton Bay in the next episode. I hope you've been enjoying it, I hope you've got some new fishing grounds out of it, and I hope you've caught some more fish because of it. If you'd like to see more of my videos, you can go to my YouTube channel. Don't forget to click that like button, it does help my videos get distributed. Hit that subscribe button and the notification bell beside it so you don't miss any future episodes. Until next time, good fishing.